Okay, this is to start recording. And present now your entire screen, share. Okay, so the first topic is English lexis, origin and the growth of English. I assume everyone can see now the slide. Oh, well, not yet. Okay, I assume now you can see the slides. So, English lexis, origin and the growth of English vocabulary. So, in the first presentation, I have three, as I said. In this one, we're going to go down into history. Look at the beginning of English, the beginning of the English language, and then the influences on English vocabulary. How English began, when English began, and as I said, the influences that have shaped English and the English lexicon. Lexicon is the mental dictionary, and the English and the mental lexicon of English. Here is the word lexicon. I think you can clearly recognize that the word lexicon and lexis and lexical share the same root. Lexicon. So the title of our presentation is English lexis. So the same root, meaning. It means meaning or word. The root must be either Greek or Latin. So let's see. Okay, the first question I would like to ask is when English began, or how old is the English language? An idea how old is English, when English began? Okay, I think we know where English began. Natasha, where did English begin? Where? In which country? What is the origin of English? Now we have the American variety, we have the Canadian variety, the Australian variety of English, the New Zealander variety of English, the South African variety. We have about 7 native varieties of English. 7 countries that speak English as a native language. Canada, the United States, the UK, Australia, South Africa. You can count them. I don't know, 6, 7, we can count them. This is not difficult. But which of these countries was the origin? So where did English begin? Come on, you should know the answer. This is not as difficult as when English began, but when English began and then it transported into other, into other parts. It is Britain, yeah. The original place where English began is the British Isles. I don't want to spend a lot of time. As I said, each topic would actually require a semester, not just a class. So I want you to be attentive and to be also quick with me so that we can save time to other discussion. Where are we? The British Isles. If this was a traditional class, I would draw on the board the British Isles, a map of how the British Isles look like. What we call now the United Kingdom, the UK, the United Kingdom. Before it was united, it was the British Isles, a group of islands in the sea. So English began there, and then from there, through colonization, through occupation, invasion and occupation, it spread across different or other regions. For example, the variety spoken in the American variety, American English, American English began in about 1620. I am using the chat. American English began. I mean, how old is American English? The variety of English spoken in the New World. It was called the New World at the time. When America was discovered, the discovery of America, Columbus, they called it discovery of America, as though there were no people living there. Prior to 1600, there was no English in America. The languages spoken there were the languages of the indigenous people, the Bumiputra, what they call until today Red Indians. The Red Indians, though they are not Indians, whether red or black or whatever color, they are not Indians at all. But I don't want to go into further details because, again, it's a time. But they are not Indians. Columbus mistakenly thought that he was going to India, sailing to India, when the king of Spain at the time, King Ferdinand, and his bitch Isabella, asked him to go and on an expedition to sail. So he thought he was going to India, but he was not going to India. He was taking the other direction. The Jews who were with him knew that he was not going to India because they had the maps from the Muslims who were advanced at the time. The Arabs and Muslims who were, this was a time when Europe was living in the Dark Ages. 500. I'm talking about 500 years ago. The discovery of America, as they call it, was in the year 14. I think, is it 92? Sorry, 29. I mean, 29. No, 1492. I think. Can someone corroborate this date, the discovery of America? Was it 1492? Or sometimes I confuse it with 1453. I don't know why I keep confusing these two dates. It's one of them.
Yes, Doctor, it's 1492.
92, thank you. For 1453, it's another date for another important event. 1453, I think this was the conquest of Constantinople, present Ankara nowadays in Turkey, by the Muslims. They conquered Constantinople, which was with the Romans, and we're going to talk about the Romans and the Roman Empire in a short while. So 1492. Columbus thought that he was going to India, but he wasn't going to India, they said, and the Jews with him on the ship, he knew that he was going to another direction. So this was what they called America. He was sailing to the New World. No Europeans before this expedition. No Europeans were in the New World, in America. There were only the indigenous people, as I said, whom they called the Red Indians, because Columbus was thinking that he was going to India. But they are not Indians at all. And they, exterminated these people. About 108 million of the natives of America were slaughtered by the British colonizers. So going back to how English spread into how English spread from, the original place of English, the British Isles, into other places, beginning with the New World, United States now, so through colonization, the British colonization of America, and then Guys, there is a lot to say. Let me go back to my main discussion. When did English begin? Okay, now we know where English began, which is easy, the British Isles, and then spread, as I said, to other parts of the world. In Australia, for example, in the 18th century, like 1750, around 1750, Captain Phillips, a British, landed and put the British flag there, and this was the beginning of the British colonization of Australia. But the natives of Australia are the Aborigines. The natives of America are what they call Red Indians. So the natives of New Zealand are the Maoris. Before the British invasion and occupation of New Zealand, there were people there living, and they slaughtered them and demonized them. Until today, for example, they keep demonizing the natives of Australia as being, as taking drugs, as being violent, as all the vices. But again, I keep it drifting. I'm trying to not to drift, but I keep it drifting. Kishan and the rest, please keep your cameras on. When did English begin? When? How old is English? Quickly. Okay, now we know that American English, the variety spoken in America, began around the year 1620. One in 1600. One in the year 1602, a group of British people, 100, I think, maybe about 102 people, sailed on a ship called Mayflower, sailed on a ship from Britain into the New World. The New World was discovered, as we have said, 1492. So about 100 years after what they call the discovery of America, a ship from Britain sailed towards the New World. It wasn't, I think, called America yet. Maybe it was called America later on. And the word America, by the way, is derived from the Portuguese explorer Amerigo Vespucci. So America comes from the name Amerigo, one of the explorers, the Portuguese explorer, because Portugal was a power at the time, a colonial power at the time, Portugal. A lot of history. So this ship Mayflower, in the year I think 1602 roughly, on board of which about 100 British people sailed towards the New World, and this was the beginning of the British colonization, the beginning of English in the New World. A group of Europeans, British, sailed there. By the way, they fled from Britain. They fled from religious persecution. These were Puritans, religious people, and they were under, persecution. Remember, Europe at the time, you might have heard of the Spanish Inquisition. Religious people, scholars were punished. Anyone who went against the teachings of the church was put to death. Remember Galileo, this famous physician. He was put to death because he came up with an idea opposing to the church idea. So there was a lot of persecution. So these Puritans, the group of people, fled on a ship, fleeing torture or persecution, and they settled in Plymouth. They built a settlement in Plymouth, Massachusetts today. And this was the beginning of English. Later on, more people began to leave Britain, and later from different parts of Europe. That's why American English is different from British English. The origin is British English, but it because many Europeans from different countries went there, so it has acquired a distinct character. So American English began about 400 years ago. But what about the British English, the origin of any English? When did it begin? An idea? Okay, roughly. How old is English? 500 years? 1,000 years? 2,000 years? More? Less? You're speaking English, you want to develop your English. It's a good idea to have an idea about the origin of English. By the way, these 102 British people who sailed on the Mayflower in 1620, not 1602, they're called or known as the Pilgrim Fathers. They're known as the Pilgrim Fathers. The group of 102 British people who went to the New World in 620, constituting the beginning of the American variety of English in the New World. No one has given me even an approximation. American variety, 400 years. But the origin of English, before it spread into further, parts like Australia, New Zealand, America, South Africa, upon the occupation of South Africa. So, 1,000 years ago, 1,005 years ago, more or less 2,000, 3,000, older than Chinese, older than Arabic. No idea? You don't want to give me even an approximation?
1,400 years?
She's being specific. 1,400. So 300 cannot, 500 cannot. But this is a good approximation. Maybe you're basing it on a piece of knowledge, information you've heard somewhere. This is a good approximation. English began. Now I'm talking about English. English actually began in the year, I'm using the chat, in the year 449. This was the beginning of English in the British Isles. In the British Isles, the United Kingdom now. Okay, two questions now. How did it begin? Who brought it? Who brought it to the British Isles? And what was the language spoken in the British Isles before the birth of English? So two questions. What was the language or languages spoken in the British Isles before the birth of English? And how did English begin? Who brought it to the British Isles? So this means, by the way, that English is not indigenous, it is not indigenous to the British Isles, meaning it was brought from outside. It wasn't indigenous to the British Isles. So who brought it and what languages? Because there were people in the British Isles, there must have been people. What language or languages did they speak? Don't you find this, don't you feel curious about knowing this? Or it doesn't matter, you just want to speak English? Kishan, are you curious to know? If you aren't, I'll skip this and move to the other topic.
Doctor, if I could make a guess.
Now answer my question first. Are you curious to know about these questions, or should we move on to the other topic.
And the English was brought by the Anglo-Saxons.
All right, who are the
Can you
Anglo-Saxons?
hear me, doctor?
Who are the Anglo-Saxons, and what language or languages were spoken in the British Isles before the arrival of the Anglo-Saxons? And who are the Anglo-Saxons?
Before English was brought by them, I believe Old Norse was spoken in England, but I'm not sure.
No,
And the
all,
Anglo-Saxons were from France, I believe.
not exactly. Though we're going to talk about the France and the influence of the French on English, but this took place about 600 years after the birth of English. The French influence on English began to take place in 1066. Remember these dates. They're crucial in the formation, origin, history, development, and the growth of English. 449, this was the Germanic occupation. Germanic occupation. But 1066, this was the Norman occupation. Who are these Germans? Who are these Normans? Okay. So as I was saying, the English language is not indigenous to the British Isles, meaning it was brought from outside. What was the language spoken in Britain before English? Okay. Before the English invaded and occupied Britain, before the English language became the language of the British Isles, the language spoken by the native tribes, the Britons, they were called the Britons, the people, the Britons. By the way, until the year 449, there was no such thing as English. The word English was not there. The word England was not there. There was no such, the city was not called England. There was no such thing as England yet. The language spoken by the native tribes was Celtic. Celtic, C-E-L-T-I-C. The language spoken by the people who inhabited the British Isles before English began in 449 is Celtic, was Celtic. Still, remains of which are still traceable in Wales, in the Highlands of Scotland, in the Isle of Man, and in Ireland. So Celtic is still spoken. Some remains of it can still be found in Ireland, in Scotland, and in Wales, which form, along with England, the United Kingdom nowadays, when it was unified. But in England, no more there is Celtic. But you can find the traces of it still in the other parts of the British Isles, or the United Kingdom, Wales, Ireland, and Scotland. So what's the language spoken before the English began? Celtic. Okay, before we talk about look at the chat column. Before we talk about the Germanic occupation in 449 and the Norman or the French occupation in 1066, I would like to talk now about the Roman occupation of the British Isles, before the German and before the Norman occupation. The Roman occupation, the Roman Empire. You must have heard of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was like America today in the past. A very strong empire that occupied and dominated many parts of the world. Even Palestine, where I come from, was under the rule of the Romans. under the Roman domination until the Muslims after the last prophet was sent to humanity, Muhammad, peace be upon him, until the Muslims conquered Jerusalem, and the keys of Jerusalem were given by the Roman Emperor to Umar al-Khattab, the second Muslim Caliph. So this is how Islam entered Palestine. When the Muslim armies, went outside Arabia, when Islam began to spread across, Africa, Asia, and later also Europe. So this is also how Islam came to Malaysia about 500 years ago, through, but not through Muslim armies, rather through Muslim traders, primarily Yemenis, who came and did trading here, and the Malays, seeing how beautiful Muslims were, embraced Islam then. This was before the presence of the Chinese and the Indians here, because these were brought later on by the British occupation. Where are we? Should I talk about the history of Malaysia or the history of English? Let us focus, guys. Or the history of America. Where are we? The Roman Empire. The Roman Empire the Roman Empire was founded in 27 BC, before Christ. It was established in 27 BC. In the year 43, about 100 years after the establishment of the Roman Empire, in the year 43, the Romans invaded and occupied the British Isles. Which year? About a few years after Christ was lifted up to heaven. In the year 43, the Roman occupation of Britain began, and the Romans stayed or remained in Britain until 409. So what was the language of the British Empire? The Roman Empire. What did the Romans speak? You've heard of Latin. You might have heard of the language Latin. It's a dead language now. The official language of the Roman Empire was Latin. And so wherever the Romans expanded, Latin was brought to the new lands, because it was the language of the empire. And so Latin was brought to the British Isles. When Britain was taken to the Roman Empire, Latin was the language of the ruling class. And so Latin was beginning to be spoken by the native Celts. So Celtic people began to speak Latin. Notice that there is no English until now. Now English, following the Germanic occupation, English will begin. And so in time of order, English is the third language spoken in the British Isles. The first one, Celtic. The second one, Latin. The third one is English. Are you following? Germanic occupation in 449. Germanic invasions of the 5th century. Who are these Germanic people? As the name suggests, they are Germans. Germanic tribes, and that's why English is similar to German, but not 100%. English does not sound totally German, because in 1066 The French occupied the British Isles and they brought the French, which is a descendant from Latin. Yes. And so English is a combination of Germanic and Latin. It doesn't sound totally like a French or Italian or Portuguese or Spanish, the Romance languages, these sister languages, whose father is Latin. And it doesn't also sound totally like German because of the influence of Latin later on. We have the English word man, and we have the same word German man. Anyhow, so who are these Germanic people? These were three tribes who came from Northern Europe and invaded and occupied and settled the British Isles. These three tribes are the Angles, the Saxons, the names of the tribes, and the Jutes. Three Germanic tribes. That's why English is defined, when we define English, we define it as a West Germanic language. West Germanic language. Arabic is not West Germanic. Arabic is Semitic language. Another language family. Hebrew is Semitic. French is Latin. Italian is Latin. Hindi is a Dravidian. Where are we? So there are language families. So English is defined as a West Germanic language because this is the origin of English, not Latin as a French or Portuguese or Italian or Spanish, these sister languages that sound the same, because the father is one. The proto-language is one. The lexifier language is one. Excuse me. Have you noticed the Angles? From the name of this tribe, the Angles, the word England and the word English were born. So the word England, meaning the land of the Angles, the word England was taken from the name of one of these invading tribes. England is taken from Angles, meaning the land of the Angles, and English was taken from the same word. Until today, we can refer to the British people as the Anglo-Saxons. Anglo-Saxons, following the names of these two tribes. Anglo as a prefix meaning English, again from the name of this tribe. Anglophone countries, as opposed to Francophone, for example, countries. Francophone, French. Alright, so this is how English began, and this is the origin of English. And so in terms of, as I said, in order, English was the third language spoken. Settlement of Britain by Germanic invaders begins in 449. These invaders were the English, a race of Low Germans. In order of time, this was the third language spoken in Britain or the British Isles. This language became dominant. This new language became dominant. It swept away Latin, the Latin language brought by the Romans, and nearly all the traces of Celtic. So it was so dominant, it became so dominant that it swept away Latin and Celtic. And so it became the native language of what we call now the English people or the Anglo-Saxons. Are you with me? Would you like to know more? Okay. Now, until until the year 1066. This is another landmark in the development and the growth of English vocabulary. 1066. So for about 600 years, you can do the calculation. Okay, if an English person wanted to eat, let's say, cow meat, he would say, I want cow meat. If he or she wanted to have, or let's say, eat sheep meat, he would order sheep meat. If he or she wanted to order, let's say, deer meat, you know, the animal deer, he would say, I want deer meat. If he wanted to say, let's say, I want pig meat, to eat pig meat, he would say, I would like pig meat. This is before 1066. But after 1066, an English person wanting to eat, let's say, cow meat, he would say, excuse me, can you get me some beef? Wanting to eat sheep meat, excuse me, can you get me some mutton? Wanting to eat pig meat, can I get some bacon? Wanting to eat some deer meat, excuse me, can I get some venison? French words. Bacon from bacon, venison, venison, mutton, mouton, beef, beef, or French words. Following the Norman occupation. Who are the Normans? French tribes. And you know, France and England are bordering countries, coterminous, they share the same border. So in 1066, tribes of the French tribes, known as the Normans, invaded and occupied the British Isles, bringing with them French. And they settled in England for about 300 years. These Normans, these French people, remained in England for about 300 years. So you can imagine the influence of the French then. For 300 years, these people stayed in England. And so you can imagine how English vocabulary has grown and the character of English vocabulary has changed. So I've just given you examples of the name of the animal, which is English, Germanic, and the name of the meat, which is French. And by the way, French was considered the prestigious language. The prestigious language, meaning English was the language of the villages. It was a vernacular spoken only by uneducated people. But educated people spoke French. Sophisticated people, fashionable people spoke French. French was the language of the government. French was the language of the educated. French was the language of the artists. And so English was not considered a high variety or a prestigious language. So you can imagine how dominant the French was then. I'll give you now some examples of the vocabulary that entered English. Excuse me, when we say French, we mean Latin, because the French is derived or a descendant of Latin, and so we say Latin via French. French was the medium, but because the father of French is Latin, so French was the medium or the via French. An enormous number of words that we use today. And we think English, they are English now, but in origin they were not English. I mean, they were not Germanic. They were Latin. Take, for example, the word beauty, which you think that it is 100% English. Before the year 1066, the word beauty did not exist in English. Beauty is a French word. Latin via French, entered English after the French occupation. So how did the English express the word beauty before they got the word beauty from Latin, from French? They called it fairhood. You know, fair, she's fair, beautiful, fairhood. So fairhood is the Germanic word, is the English word, the pure English, the English word for the beauty. The beauty is a French word, Latin via French, for example. And so many of the words that we use today were actually or entered English after the French occupation or the Norman occupation of English, so of England or the British Isles. Let's look at some of these examples. By the way, this may explain why there are so many synonyms in English. Synonyms. You find two words that have the same core meaning, though they are used differently in context. But as far as the core meaning is considered the same. This because one word has entered English from a source, another from another source, like Germanic and like Latin. For example, look at these words. Go down is the Germanic or English word. Go down. But after the French occupation, we've got the word descend. Descend. To go down. Send. This is the Germanic word, the English word. After the Norman occupation, we've got the word transmit. Transmit. Before the Norman occupation, we had the word heal. After the Norman occupation, we've got the word recuperate from Latin. Before, we had kingly. After, we had royal or regal. Before, we had warrior. After, we had soldier, the Latin word. Before, we had manly. After, we had virile. Before, we had cow. After, we had beef. Before, we had sheep. After, we had mutton, mouton. Before, we had pig. But after, we had beef. Bacon. Before, we had deer. After, we had venison. Deer meat, for example. These are only little examples. Actually, about 50% of English vocabulary is Latin. About 50% is Latin, 30 Germanic, and as we shall see, the other 20% is largely from Greek. That's why we have roots of English words that are Latin, roots that are Greek. Do you know what language you're speaking, guys? Or you're learning to speak? Do you know what language you're speaking? The influences that have shaped English? The word communication is not Germanic in origin. Before the French occupation, there was no such thing. The word communication was not there. It's a French, Latin, via French. Communication. Communication. French. Communication. But you know, the words might change slightly their pronunciation. They become anglicized to make them easier to follow the English system. Like when a French or English word, for example, or Arabic word enters Malay, is borrowed by Malays, for example, it would be adapted to the Malay system or phonological system. And so destination will be destinasi, location will become lokasi, etc., etc. So some adaptation takes place, but the origin is this language or that language. Until the Norman conquest or the French occupation in 1066, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes inhabited England, the Germanic tribes. They were of Germanic origin when they came to Britain in the 5th century to eventually become the English. Originally, they spoke Germanic dialects from which Old English developed. These Germanic tribes had displaced the earlier Celtic inhabitants, whose influence on Old English was confined to a few Celtic place names. The modern languages Welsh, Irish, and Scots Gaelic are descended from Celtic dialects. The Normans spoke French, and for the 3 centuries after the occupation, the French was used for all affairs of the state and for most commercial, social, and cultural matters. The French was so dominant. The West Saxon literary language was abandoned, but regional varieties of English continued to be used in homes, churches, and the marketplace. So English was confined to the church, to the marketplace, but not to educational institutions, to universities, to government offices. So French was the prestigious language. Everyone wanted to speak French. Mutual communication, but not je ne suis pas content, but not I would like a cup of tea, pure English or English. Where are we? This was a situation of language contact between the French, the culturally dominant language at the time, and English. Language contact. Two languages competing. Language contact. And the culturally dominant language was in England. This was 1,000 years ago, 900 years ago. So the English themselves did not want to speak English. They felt that English was, the language of the villages, the language of the kampong. Do you still want to speak English? Do you still want to pursue a degree in English? Another story. Anyhow, English now is dominant. Who knows tomorrow which language will become dominant? Because a language does not become international because of the language itself. For a language to attain an international status, this goes beyond linguistic factors. There are extra linguistic factors. For example, the power of the people of the language, the economic prowess, the military power of the people. And so for a language to become international goes beyond linguistic factors. And so if the Malays become strong enough, dominant enough, Malay become an international language, believe it or not. Lokasi, Destinasi, Boleh, Sayata Boleh, Chakapasa Malay will become dominant if the people become powerful. If Arabs, and this is gonna happen because Arabic is the language of Islam, and Islam is destined to be the religion of the world, because Islam was sent to humanity, all humanity, and this day will come, hopefully soon. So Arabic will become dominant by then, but Arabs will not be wicked, because the message of Islam is peace, not domination, and not hegemony. It's just to help liberate people from the worshipping one another to the worship of the one God. Islam is a universal declaration of the freedom and dignity of the human being. This is the message of Islam. And by the way, quickly having touched upon this, Islam is the same message that was brought by Jesus, by Moses, if you are a Christian. The same message that was brought by Buddha, if he was a prophet. It was the same message. All prophets and messengers, beginning from Adam until the last one, Muhammad, peace be upon him, the same message: worship none but God. Do not let others lord it over you. Do not become a slave to your parliament. Do not become a slave to your nationality. Do not become so Islam is a universal declaration of the freedom of everyone. I am free. I am not being controlled by any human being. Be he is my immediate. I am only accountable and to God, the only God. So Islam is in essence a freedom to people. But again, this is now another topic. During these 3 centuries, vast numbers of French words entered English, of which the following are just representative: government, nation, attorney, lechery, religion, chapel, crown, jury, saint, virgin, royal, prince, judge, miracle, value, money, state, crime, charity, pray, society, parliament, sue, court, mercy, beauty. These are, common everyday words that we use in English. They are English words, but not in origin, meaning they are not Germanic. They are of Latin origin. We just said that beauty is French, Latin. Fairhood is Germanic. So now you have a clear idea about the origin and the growth of English, sources of English vocabulary. And so the original source of English is Germanic, and then Latin, following the French occupation, and also Greek. English is also influenced by Greek. So many of English words have Greek roots. For example, the word triathlon has a Greek root, athl, from the Greek word athlos, meaning contest. And so you have the root athl and the prefix tri, meaning 3, and the suffix on, triathlon, as in decathlon, or marathon. So a triathlon is a contest that consists of 3 types of activities, typically swimming, running a long distance, and there was 1/3 activity. The word logic or logical comes from the Greek root logos. The Greek root word logos, meaning word or reason. And so there are many words in English whose roots are Greek. By the way, in the textbook we use for reading skills, when I taught you this course a year ago, there is a list in chapter 2, and please, I advise you to go to this list again and again. There is a list of Latin roots, and a list of Greek roots, and a list of prefixes from Latin, and a Greek of suffixes. So consult these lists. They will help expand your vocabulary. They will help you remember vocabulary. They will help you determine the meaning of many words. So this list, please take them, copy them out, put them in front of you, expose yourself to them regularly. They will help expand your English, because most English words are built up using the process of affixation, whereby you have an a root, whether Latin, whether Latin or Greek, and then affixes, whether a prefix or a suffix. So when you know these roots, you can learn and understand and remember the meanings of many words, because based on these roots, many words have been derived, and many more can be derived. So please learn these lists of Latin roots and Greek roots along with the common affixes. So we have just seen this, by the way, a discussion from the third topic today. So we have just seen some English words taken from Greek roots. So there are also many from Latin roots. If you take the word, for example, let's postpone this until we move to the third topic, affixation. So let's stay now focused on the history of English lexis and the influences that have shaped English vocabulary and the sources of English. So these are the three main sources of English. The main sources. By the way, English has borrowed from every language imaginable. From every language imaginable, English has borrowed words from Japanese, from Arabic, from Malay, from Swahili, from Surinamese, from German, from French, from Italian, from Hindi, from every language, because especially after they colonized many parts following the British Empire, not the Roman Empire, the British Empire, so they got into contact with many people, and so they acquired some of the vocabularies of these peoples. So English has a cosmopolitan character. If you speak Spanish, you're bound to see Spanish words in English. If you speak Malay, you're bound to see Malay words in English. For example, talking about Malay now, and that most of you are Malay, the word lapak is an English word. You can find it in the English dictionary, but taken from Malay. The word this is not the time to remember, but whatever your tongue is, you're bound to find words from your tongue into English. But I'm just curious, what is this word that I tried to recall? It means to kill. What words in Malay that mean to kill? Come on. Other words. I'm just being inquisitive now. Is it to kill or? Maybe not to kill, but I can't recall. A mock. Thank you. What is a mock? This is the word. Yeah, thank you. Someone has got it. So this is Malay, for example. Now I look at the origin of the word amok in English, which means to behave uncontrollably and disruptively. Stone throwing anarchists were running amok. So the word comes from Malay, amok, rushing in a frenzy, like being crazy, going here and there in a homicidal frenzy, like you want to kill this and that. Amok, he was running naked on the streets. Amok, he was running amok on the streets naked with a knife in his hand. I saw him last night in my dreams. Where are we? I saw him. An Orang Asli was running amok on the streets of KL with a spear in his hand. Okay, so these are three major sources of English. Now I want to give you an example of an example of three words that have the core meaning, but the difference lies in the fact that each one has entered English from one of these sources. One from Germanic, one from Latin, one from Greek. They're used differently in English. They are not used synonymous. They are synonyms, but they are not used identically. Look at these sets. The word lustful, from lust, sexual desire, is the English word. When the French occupied the British Isles, they brought the word amorous from Latin. Amor, lover. And so amorous has to do with love, sexual love. And from Greek, we have the word erotic, again related to sexual love, from the name of the Greek god Eros, the god of sexual love. Eros in mythology, Roman god, Phoenician god. These are just, Indian god. These are, mythologies. For there is no god but God. Another example is the word fear, which is the English word, or a dread, as in I dread lizards. I have a dread to lizards. And then the word aversion from Latin, meaning again fear or a dread. I have aversion to lizards. I hate them. And from Greek, we have the word phobia, again meaning fear. So, as you can see then, English vocabulary is a combination. Okay, we can say that English is a West Germanic language, but English is also a blend of three main streams of languages. Germanic, Latin, and Greek. And in addition to these three main sources, English also has acquired an international cosmopolitan character through the acquisition of vocabularies from different languages. As we have just some examples from Malay, Arabic, you have, for example, alcohol, algebra, algorithm, bint, falah or falahin, many words. There are hundreds of words from Arabic into English. This is an interesting video about the etymology and surprising origins of words in English, but we have no time, unfortunately, to play it. But please, you can just write the title of the video in the address bar on the internet in Google, and you will find this video by the linguist Mark Franco. Interesting to watch, interesting to see. So I think you should be appreciative of this, a brief introduction about the history of English, how it has evolved, and the influences on its vocabulary. Now let's move on to the second topic, but as you can see, I don't know, we're running short of time. We need a 6-hour class or even a 10-hour class to do justice to the issues I bring to my classes. Okay, move on. Processes of word formation and lexical enlargement. So this is the second topic I would like to talk about related to vocabulary, processes of word formation and lexical expansion or lexical enlargement. In any language there are established ways to create new words, to make, coin, derive new words. Why is there a need to derive new words? Why do languages evolve continuously? Language has evolved throughout history to serve major functions in human lives. language has evolved to satisfy human needs, human wants, human feelings, to help them express themselves, to help them label new inventions, to help them conceptualize, to help them be more sophisticated, be more prosperous, be more successful. So language is not a static, rigid thing. Language is dynamic. Language is flexible. It is meant to be like that so that it can accommodate human needs, evolving human needs throughout the years. And so there must be in every language recognizable processes through which new words can be developed to meet such evolving needs. In English, and so is the case in many other languages, so the processes I'm going to touch upon only touch because of the constraint of time. Most of them are universal, found in many languages. So English makes use in its expansion and enlargement. English makes use of some of most of these processes of word formation. I really have no time to discuss them, so I'll just pick a few, and if you're interested you can look up the rest on the internet or in any book about the morphology of English, or even more for an introduction to English or to linguistics can provide you with a discussion of these processes. If I had time, I would have definitely gone through them in detail. But it's time, and there is another important topic we haven't, the one that your classmate presented at the beginning, but they haven't done it justice. So I need to spend some time on it, talking about affixation, which is one of these processes of word formation and lexical expansion. But it is the largest in English, and so I have dedicated a separate discussion, the third topic, which is word parts and morphemic analysis. So let's not now say anything about affixation. Borrowing and calquing. Borrowing, one established process of word formation in any language, not just English, in any language is borrowing. Borrowing simply means that you take a word used in a language and you use it in your own language. Of course, borrowing here does not mean that you're going to return this word one day. It's just called borrowing, but it doesn't imply that you're going to use the word for 50 years and then return it and stop using it. No. So there are many examples of borrowed words. A word entering a language through borrowing is known as a loan word. And there are hundreds of loan words in English, hundreds of loan words in Malay, hundreds of loan words in Arabic, and etc. etc. So some examples of loan words in English, for example, let's first of all think of some. We've just mentioned some Malay words borrowed by the English. The word amok, the word lapak, these are Malay. Malay also has borrowed words from English. We've just mentioned some examples. Destinasi, lokasi, for example. The ersatz, I think from Italian, meaning artificial, not real. You can look it up later on. Ersatz coffee. The word Superman from German. These are just a few examples, but if you want to list borrowing, you can come up with thousands of words. Words that you think that are English. They are English now, part of the English lexicon, English dictionary. But in terms of origin and etymology, they have entered English through the process known as borrowing. Compounding. Compounding is a process of word formation, whereby you simply bring two words that used to be or that are used separately and you combine them, making them one word. So class and room, combining them to become classroom. Dancing and the floor, combining them to make dancing floor. Notice that compounds can be made up of more than two words. For example, man about town. Man about town. You use hyphens between the elements. Man about town. So a compound can be made up of more than one word. So compounding is a process that can result in the creation or coinage of new words. A famous process in English that is also loved by many English people are fond of it, is blending. Blending is a process whereby you bring two words, you take the first syllable part of a word and the last syllable of another, and you blend them together, combine them together, resulting in a new word. For example, brunch, which is a blend. The word that enters the language using a blending is called a blend. So brunch is a blend from the first part of a breakfast and the last part of lunch. So brunch, denoting a meal taken by someone who skips a breakfast and takes the meal a bit earlier than lunch. So if you take your breakfast at 7 and lunch, let's say, at 1 or 2, so a brunch is taken by someone who skips a breakfast and takes this meal, let's say, at 12. So brunch. The word motel is a blend from motor, hotel. The word hazmat is a blend from hazardous and material. Haz and mat, hazardous material. The word chillax from chill and relax. The word bromance from brother, and there are many, and creative people experiment and create new words to suit evolving needs. Another common also process is a clipping or a truncation. Clipping does not really result in a totally new word. In clipping, you just bring a longer word and you clip it, you shorten it to a smaller word. And so the word math is a clipped form from mathematics. The word deli from delicatessen. The word, okay, I know that you know the word cab, but do you know that the word cab is a clipped form, meaning it has entered English or been lexicalized as a result of the process known as a clipping. So cab is from cabriolet. Cabriolet. So it's a clipped form from cabriolet. Math from mathematics, etc., etc. Back formation. In back formations, back formation is a process. Okay, how to explain back formation? All right. You are familiar with the word edit. Okay. And you are familiar with the word editor. You know teach. And you know teacher. Okay. Look at the other set. Teach and teacher. Which word is derived from which? Is teacher derived from teacher or teacher derived from teach? What is the root? Which word was first? Is it teach and then teacher or teacher and then teach? What is the root? Come on.
Teach.
It must be teach and then teacher, adding the suffix er. It must be read, the root, and then reader. Sing and then singer. Play and then player. Swim and then swimmer. Cook and then cooker. That's a different story. Because cooker does not mean someone who cooks. Not a chef. Alright. So it was teach and then teacher. Read and then reader. Okay. Based on this analogy, you would say that it was edit and then editor. But reality is not. The truth is that it was edited first in English, and then the word edit through the process of back formation has entered English. It was edited first, and then edit came into existence, not the other way around. So words entering English through this way are known as back formations, and the process is back formation. So it wasn't, for example, liaise and then we had liaiser, someone who liaises. No, it was liaiser and then we've got liaise and then liaison. Okay? So this is also, there are words that have entered English through back formation. Conversion. In conversion, this is also known as functional shift. It can also alternatively be called functional shift or even zero derivation. In conversion, you bring an existing word and you just change its function. Grammatical class, part of a speech. And so the word bottle, for example, originally was used as a noun, bottle. But later on, through conversion, it has been converted into a verb. And so we can use the word bottle now as a verb also. To bottle, meaning to fill in a bottle. So words entering the language through conversion experience a functional shift, a shift in their function. There is nothing, you don't find any change in the morphology or shape of the word. That's why it is also called zero derivation. So bottle, bottle. Chair, as another example, was used as a noun originally. But we know that we can also use it as a verb, as in to chair a meeting. So conversion and conversions. I have no time to go on. We have barely 20 minutes now for the last topic. So I cannot, move on to talk about the other less common, but there is still used, or some words have entered the language through them. If you're interested, you can, as I said, pursue them on your own, or else, complain to the university, ask them to make Dr. Aladdin's class at least 4 hours or 5 hours. Then in the future I can, detail the rest. Quickly moving on to the third topic. Where are we? Inferring meaning from word parts. So this has to do with the process of affixation. Affixation, word parts and morphemic analysis. So this is the process of affixation. Many words in English are made up of several parts. Adding away different word parts. Let me just double check this. This is from the main textbook. You can refer to page 66 in the main textbook. Adding or taking away. Adding or taking away different word parts can or may change the word's meaning, part of a speech or a grammar. When you add or take away a word part, it may change the meaning, it may change the word class, the part of the speech, and so the meaning. This is a process of word formation and lexical enlargement known as affixation. Affixation is a morphological process. The word morphological comes from morphology, and morphology is the study of word parts and the study of words, how words are formed, and the rules by which words are formed. So morphology is a branch of the study of language, a branch of linguistics that deals with the internal structure of words, how words are made. This is morphology as opposed to syntax, which deals with the sentence, the internal structure of the sentence, morphology and syntax. In any introduction to linguistics, you find a chapter about morphology and another about syntax, along with other issues in linguistics and other, branches of linguistics. So, for example, so is a morphological process of lexical derivation whereby an affix is attached to a root or a stem. For example, work, worker, the root work and the suffix able, workable, the root work, and you have a prefix and a suffix, unworkable. We've given you also in the course of discussing the earlier topic some examples of the Greek roots, and their in words. We came across athl. If you can go here to the chat column, athl, a Greek root, and then we have triathlon, the prefix tri added to athl meaning contest, from the Greek root athlos meaning contest, and then the suffix on. So in affixation then is an affix is attached to a root, whether before the root or after the root, or a stem, and these are examples. In English, affixation makes up most of the vocabulary store, and so affixation is the largest word formation process in English. There are other word formation processes, as we have seen, borrowing, clipping, conversion, back formation, as we have seen, but the largest word formation process in English is affixation, meaning most of the vocabulary store, most of the lexical reservoir of English is made from, the English lexicon is made from largely words that have entered or been lexicalized through affixation. You will learn vocabulary better if you can recognize word parts and understand how they can change a word. You will have a complete understanding of the words, and the third advantage is that you will remember the words better because you can connect them to something you already know. These are the parts or other words with the same parts. So we've just mentioned triathlon. So if you know triathlon and you come across decathlon or marathon, for example, athl, if you can recognize it in these words, then you will know that these words have to do with contest or a competition. So remembering word parts will help you guess the meaning of many unfamiliar words. Take a look at these words, but I have no time really to discuss them. It's very sad that we have no time. It pains me just not to see the time whizzing by. It just pains me. I wish I could make the clock all the time freeze when I teach you guys. These are words that have entered English using the process of affixation. Just examples. Which one should I pick? If you take as an example the word pandemonium, the first word, let's say, as an example, pandemonium. The word pandemonium, if you try to analyze its structure, you find that the word pandemonium is made up of three parts. You can clearly recognize a root, the root demon, meaning Satan, meaning devil, demon. And to each you can find affixes, pan at the beginning, the pan, and am at the end. So once you recognize the root, then the rest will be affixes, whether a prefix or suffix or both, as in a circumfix. So we can clearly break down the word pandemonium to three elements or parts. By the way, the technical word for parts is morpheme. So let's use the technical term, morpheme. Morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning. The smallest unit of meaning. Why the smallest? Because it's smaller than a morpheme, you get sounds, and sounds alone are meaningless. So pan has meaning as a morpheme in English, but pa alone has no meaning. Ah alone has no meaning. Pa alone has no meaning. So a morpheme is then the smallest meaning of unit of meaning. Okay, so having broken the word into its morphemes, morphemic analysis, this can help you figure out the meaning. And you have a problem with any of the parts, then you go and look up the part or the morpheme that you do not know. So for example, now you know demon, meaning devil, Satan. You need then to know the meaning of pan and am. Let's say you do not know the meaning of pan. Go to a dictionary, look it up. The dictionary will tell you that pan means all, inclusive of everything, including everything or everyone, all. And am has to do, maybe denotes a place, like in auditorium, like in platorium, for example. Now with this understanding, you can guess the meaning. And do not forget also the context, the other mechanism or strategy for figuring out the meaning of a word, contextual analysis. So pandemonium then, literally at least, looks like a place where there are many demons, or a place in which all demons are there. You have a rough idea of the meaning. Okay, someone has said hellfire, thank you. So pandemonium is like being in hellfire. A place where there is a lot of, a lot of confusion, so that's a pandemonium. Okay, let's take another example. Which example? You tell me. Pick up an example and let me discuss it, guys. Let's take our lovely Putri. Putri, choose one of these words so they can work, so that we can look at it, so that we can look at its morphemes and try to analyze it morphemically. Choose one. The one you like, or the one you would like me to analyze. Quickly.
Doctor, I can't see.
How
You're
come?
so small.
You mean I'm not presenting?
No,
Okay.
it is presented, but it's small.
So what should I do then?
You could try change the font size or zoom in.
When you cannot see, guys, you should tell me. Okay, what about...
Alright,
Okay, is it any better now?
yeah.
Okay, we can see it.
Okay, select a word and let's analyze it morphemically. Morphemic analysis.
Alright, pandemonium?
Oh, come on, we've already analyzed pandemonium. Pick up another one.
Oh, sorry.
We've already analyzed pandemonium and the triathlon. Pick up another word. I have no time to go through all of them to exemplify.
Demonization?
Okay, demonization. Okay. Who can analyze this word morphemically? Meaning, break it down into its morphemes. How many morphemes can you recognize and what are they?
Demon.
Obviously demon, as in demon in the above word. And obviously demon is the root. To each is the suffix eyes is being added to derive a verb, and so to demonize must be a verb, and then Asian to it is being added to derive the noun. And so this word, obviously we have demon, which is a root, and we have then eyes to make it a verb, and then we have Asian to make it the suffix Asian to make it a noun. Okay, so demon, we're already familiar with demon. We're already familiar. Okay, eyes, to demonize. And so you can guess the meaning. To demonize then someone, or to demonize a people, or to demonize a party is to make them sound or seem like demons. Evil, wicked. Demons are not angels. And so in his discourse, in his speech, he demonized Malays. So he made Malays sound like wicked, evil people. The Israelis demonized the Palestinians, the demonization of the Palestinians, making them sound, criminal, terrorists. Demonization. So the Asian, the process of demonizing. Can you arrive at the meaning or not? At least can you guess the meaning or not when you analyze the morphemes? And so this is an aspect of English that you should pay attention to from now onwards. It will help you greatly to look at the, as I said, the roots, the Greek and Latin roots in this book, and also in our also main textbook. For example, on page 67 and on page 68, there are many common Latin and Greek roots. So please at home do these exercises to help consolidate your learning and boost your proficiency in English. I wish I could take another, example, but no time. If you analyze, these words are built up of parts. Very quickly, for example, if you look at andocracy and androcracy, an idea what androcracy is? Copy. Here's the column. Do not go to your dictionary. Okay, you do not know what androcracy. Okay, but can you try to break it down? Do you recognize morphemes? What morphemes can you at least recognize? The ones you're sure about. Parts of it that can remind you of other words. For example, democracy, aristocracy, theocracy. So you have racy. It reminds you of words like democracy, theocracy, a system of governance, autocracy, meritocracy, ethnocracy. So a kind of governance, a type of government. Okay, so we're left with the other morpheme, andro. It must be andro. Do not tell me and, because if you say and, the conjunction and, what about ro? There is no ro in English. So we have a crassy. We cannot say and then ro, because ro is not a morpheme. There is no ro in English. But if you go to a dictionary and write and ro, you can find andr or andro. So you need to know then, to know the meaning of this word, you need to know what is andr or andro. Andro comes from the Greek word andros, meaning man. And so androcracy is a type of government controlled only by men. The country has an androcratic system. No women, for example. Androcracy. And so any word that has andro in its morphemic structure has to do with men. All right. So when you learn these roots and the prefixes and suffixes, your ability to figure out the meaning will mushroom. The meaning, vocabulary strategies. The meaning of a word in a language is determined by its morpheme structure and context. So two things can help you figure out the meaning: the structure of the word and the context in which it is used. In the previous class, we talked about contextual analysis and how the context, surrounding context, can help you figure out the meaning of a number of words by looking at the part of your speech, by looking at the wider context, the sentence and the sentences surrounding it, and sometimes even the passages, by sometimes paying attention to the sound and the source, and looking at other clues such as explanations, examples, antonyms, synonyms, etc., etc. Today we're focusing on the other strategy, morphemic analysis, where you look at the internal structure of word and you try to break it down into its smaller parts. And so morphemic or morphological analysis is the process of acquiring the meaning of a word by analyzing its morphemes or meaningful parts, meaningful bits and pieces, technically morphemes. It is the conscious and habitual metacognitive and also metalinguistic segmentation of the internal components of words. It is the process of breaking down structurally complex words into their basic constituent morphemes, their lexical substructures to determine their meaning. And so words are made up of phonemes, sounds. Phonemes are combined according to the phonological rules of a language to create morphemes, and morphemes are combined according to the morphological rules of the language, a language, to create lexemes or words. So we have roots and we have affixes around the roots. So parts of words. The first part to look at is the root. All right. The first part to try to figure out when you want to see if you can work out the meaning of a word based on morphemic analysis. Not all words are amenable to morphemic analysis, meaning they can be analyzed this way, because only words that are created through affixation that can be amenable to this kind of analysis. But borrowed words, you cannot break them down because they are borrowed. We do not know how they are formed in their original language. A word that is a blend, okay, it is a blend. You may recognize the two blended parts. As I said, hazmat from hazardous and material. But this is a blend, not a word entering through affixation. So the first part or type of morpheme is to look at the root. And very quickly, roots are of two types. There are free roots and there are bound roots. A free root is a root that can stand on its own. It's a standalone word. a stand-alone word, roots that can stand alone as words. For example, agree, agree. So this is a root and can be a word on its own, independent. So you just add to it affixes, disagree, disagreement, disagreement. So there are a free roots system, a free root. You can use it as a word, but not all roots are free, meaning you cannot use them as a standalone, independently. They have to be attached to other affixes to be used. We've already seen some examples. Athl, and as in triathlon. You cannot use athl in its original language. It was athlos. It was a word, a free root, athlos. And so the spelling of a root may change in the English word, may change. Logos is a Greek word meaning word or reason. So in English you might find it in the word logic, for example. So log, from log, logos. And so there are free roots and there are bound roots. A bound root cannot stand alone, cannot be used as a word on its own. And as I said, in this book you have an extensive list, or a list of the most common roots, whether Greek or Latin. And then also in our main textbook, if you look at page 67 and page 68, you can see many of these roots. Just one more example of a bound root, dict. Dict is a Latin root meaning to say. To say. And so any word having this root, to say, it comes from the Latin word dictum. Dictum, saying. And so any word that has as its root dict has to do with say. And so you can understand the word dictionary. You can understand the word dictum. You can understand the word predict, which is made up of the Latin root dict, to say, and the prefix to say before, and this is the meaning of a predict. So there are then some free and some bound roots. And next, word parts, affixes. So first one, roots. 2, affixes. How to make this 2. Alright. Anyhow, later on I can fix this, but this is 1. So roots and affixes. The building blocks of words. In English, words are formed largely through the process of affixation, as we have said. You use a base, a root, and then you attach to it affixes. As we have seen in these examples. No time to watch these videos. Infixes. Okay, so there are many types of affixes. There are prefixes. So prefixes are used before a root, such as on, this, im, etc., etc. Many examples are in the textbook. Suffixes or postfixes. Suffixes or postfixes. And these are attached after the root. English has many prefixes and many suffixes. So English makes use of a prefixation and suffixation. There are two other types, or even three other types of affixes, and these are circumfixation. But a circumfix, as the name suggests, circum from the Latin root meaning around. So a circumfix is an affix that is attached, that has two parts, attached before a root and after a root. In English, we do not have many examples of infixes, so of circumfixes. So circumfixation is not very common in English. Take a look at this circumfix in English. For example, the word enlighten. So enlighten. So you have light, the root light, and the circumfix in, or embolden, to make bold, em and then en. But English doesn't make good, productive use of circumfixes. Malay does. From my observation of Malay makes heavy use of circumfixation. Take for example the word permainan. You have the root main, to play, and then the circumfix per and an. So you have the same pattern in many other words. Another type of affix is infix. So infixes, as again the name suggests, an infix is a type of affix that is inserted in the root, not at the beginning or at the end or both, but rather in the root. In the root. Vietnamese is a language that makes good use of infixation. In English, we have only a few examples. They are modern examples introduced into English largely by African Americans. A common prefix in English is goddamn. A common infix in English is goddamn. Notice the hyphens at the beginning. Sorry, the hyphens are not maybe used correctly. Let me see. So an example of an infix in English, you have the word absolutely, okay? We've said that an infix is inserted in the root. The root is being broken and inserted in it. And so for example, absolutely, you have absa-goddamn-lutely. Absa-goddamn-lutely. To see it better, let me use hyphens so that you can. Okay. So absa-goddamn-lutely. So the infix goddamn is inserted in the root absolutely, resulting in absa-goddamn-lutely. Another type of infix in English is a bloody, as in Singa-bloody-yor, Singapore, Singa-bloody-yor. Have you been to Singapore? Yes, I have. Have you been to Singapore? Yes, I have. After a while, again the same question. Have you been to Singapore? What's wrong with you? Yes, I have been to Singa-bloody-yor. By the way, infixes, as you can see, are used when the speaker is being angry or aggravated. A more common infix in English is fucking, as in unfucking believable, unfucking believable. How is Dr. Aladdin's class? Do you like it? Oh, certainly. It's unfucking believable how he, talks about English morphology and how, the history of English has begun. It's really fantastic. I don't like to miss any of his classes. Unfucking believable. Oh my god, really? Unfucking fortunately, I don't attend his classes. Unfucking fortunately. Unfucking fortunately, I don't attend his classes. Oh, you shouldn't do that. From now onwards, you must attend every one of his classes. Absolutely. Okay, guys. So these are examples of infixes. There is also a suprafixation, but I can see that time is already. It's 12:14. I think I have to shut up now. Thank you guys for attending the class. Do you have any questions? Any comments? Have you enjoyed the class? Found it insightful, enjoyable, unfucking believably enjoyable, or just enjoyable? If it's too enjoyable, you can't describe how enjoyable it is. You can say unfucking believably enjoyable. I can't imagine. Okay. Okay then. Thank you again. If you have no questions, then we shall meet, God willing, next week with more fun about vocabulary. One more class about vocabulary next week, collocations, phrases. Alright, that's it. Sayonara.
Thank you, Doctor.
جنب لقي مع السلامة. Adieu. Au revoir. There are many more expressions to mean the same thing. They are borrowings. Alright, see you.